Donald Trump was publicly triggered into a full-blown social media meltdown after his administration was humiliated in front of and by the Supreme Court of the United States, including some conservative justices. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, from Mediaite rather, Trump rips into sleazebag Dems for playing the ref with the Supreme Court. Donald Trump lashed out at the, quote, stone-cold crazy Democrats, this time accusing them of playing the ref with the Supreme Court as it hears a major case tied to his immigration agenda. The Supreme Court began oral arguments Thursday on the administration's push to end birthright citizenship, presented in a January executive order that would deny citizenship to children born in the U.S. to non-citizen or non-permanent resident parents. In a furious Truth Social post Thursday, Trump raged against radical left sleazebags for playing the ref in a bid to shape the court's decision. He said the radical left sleazebags, which has no cards remaining in its illegal bag of tricks, is, in a very coordinated manner, playing the ref with regard to the United States Supreme Court. They lost the election in a landslide. We didn't. And with it, have totally lost their confidence and reason. Well, we may have lost our confidence. That's a separate issue. They are stone cold crazy. I hope the Supreme Court doesn't fall for the games they play. The people are with us in bigger numbers than ever before. Not true. He's the least popular president in modern American history. They want to make America great again. While the 14th Amendment guarantees citizenship to, quote, all persons born or naturalized in the United States, Trump's legal team is sidestepping that question and instead asking the justices to rein in lower court power, specifically the ability of federal judges to issue nationwide injunctions. 3 federal judges have already blocked the policy nationwide, calling it legally indefensible. The administration argues these sweeping injunctions tie the president's hands and asks the court to limit their scope. Liberal justices hammered the government's position, warning that removing nationwide blocks would create a chaotic patchwork of legal standards across the states. Conservative justices, meanwhile, appeared open to narrowing injunctions. A decision is expected by early July. I will point out that when it comes to nationwide injunctions, Republicans love them as long as a Democrat's president. Then you can have as many nationwide injunctions as, Joe Biden's president? Oh, shit. Judge Kazmarek out of Amarillo, Texas, as many nationwide injunctions as humanly possible. Please, sir. Coming right up. But when it's a Republican president, well, then those nationwide injunctions, we don't like them so much. I want to play you some clips of Trump's Solicitor General, Sauer, who used to be his personal attorney, who argued in front of the Supreme Court regarding the Trump immunity decision, getting humiliated. In these two, the first one here by a liberal justice, Elena Kagan, then by a Trump appointee, Amy Coney Barrett, and then in the third clip, I think it's Justice Kavanaugh, another Trump appointee, as well as some commentary from Ellie Honig, CNN's chief legal correspondent. But let's start with Kagan first.
It sort of depends on the government's own actions in a case like this one, where one can expect that there is not going to be a great deal of disagreement among the lower courts. I mean, let's assume that you lose in the lower courts pretty uniformly, as you have been losing on this issue, and that you never take this question to us. I mean, I noticed that you didn't take the substantive question to us. You only took the nationwide injunction question to us. I mean, why would you take the substantive question to us? You're losing a bunch of cases, this guy over here, this woman over here, they'll have to be treated as citizens, but nobody else will. Why would you ever take this case to us?
Well, in this particular case, we have deliberately not presented the merits to this court on the question of the scope of remedies, because, of course, that makes it a clean vehicle where the court doesn't have to look at the past.
You're ignoring the import of my question. I'm suggesting that in a case in which the government is losing constantly, there's nobody else who's going to appeal, they're winning, it's up to you to decide whether to take this case to us. If I were in your shoes, there is no way I'd approach the Supreme Court with this case. So you just keep on losing in the lower courts, and what's supposed to happen to prevent that?
Again, I respectfully disagree with that forecast of the merits, but in response to the question, what I would say is, we have an adversarial system, and if the government is not, for example, not respecting circuit precedent on the court's hypothetical in the Second Circuit, someone injured in the Second Circuit could take the case up. And they could say, look, the government is violating circuit precedent on the hypothetical multiple circuits.
That's the case we're going to take? Somebody who says who says, after we've said that this all has to be done one by one, then we're going to take a case from somebody who objects to proceeding one by one?
It's a great point about the patchwork issue. And listen, I should say, I'm torn on the issue of nationwide injunctions. People who follow my channel know I do have serious concerns and issues with the judiciary, just in principle. These 9 unelected, clerical kings, right? These philosopher kings, unelected, unaccountable to the people, being able to tell Congress and the president what to do, but they can't be told what to do by president and the Congress. Like, I have issues with that, especially with the corruption, particularly with the conservative justices of the Supreme Court. So I still have issues with, like, where does judicial review become judicial supremacy? Still remain. I still have those issues. But I think it's hilarious that she's roasting him like, dude, you suck. You guys are losing like all the time, getting your asses kicked like left, right, and center. Can't help but notice like you totally bitched out on, bringing the substantive issue before us because, you were probably terrified of how it would, be ruled out. I love how she's just roasting him to his face. But I also think it's a good point. Like, nationwide injunctions can be useful. I mean, right now they're being used pretty well against Donald Trump, but they also have abuses as well. I understand this issue, and also the absence of nationwide injunctions creating a very chaotic patchwork. It's a difficult thing to consider. I truly believe that even on the merits, it's tough to consider. But that was a liberal justice. What about a conservative justice? Well, Amy Coney Barrett got in on it too, and she smacked around Trump's Solicitor General pretty hard as well.
Opinions and judgments here. Did I understand you correctly to tell Justice Kagan that the government wanted to reserve its right to maybe not follow a Second Circuit precedent, say, in New York, because you might disagree with the opinion?
Our general practice is to respect those precedents, but there are circumstances when it is not a categorical practice. It is, and that is not
this administration's practice or the longstanding practice of the federal government. And I'm not talking about in the Fourth Circuit, are you going to respect a Second Circuit? I'm talking about within the Second Circuit. And can you say, is that this administration's practice or a longstanding one?
As I understand it, longstanding
Really?
policy of the Department of Justice. Yes, that we generally, as it was phrased to me, generally respect circuit precedent, but not necessarily in every case. And some examples might be a situation where we're litigating to try and get that circuit precedent overruled and so forth.
Well, okay, so I'm not talking about a situation in which, the Second Circuit has a case from 1955 and you think it's time for it to be challenged. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about in this kind of situation. I'm talking about this week, the Second Circuit holds that the executive order is unconstitutional, and then what do you do the next day or the next week?
Generally, we follow those.
So you're still saying generally?
Yes.
And you still think that it's generally the policy, longstanding policy of the federal government to take that approach?
That is my understanding.
Okay, but it sounds to me like you accept a Cooper versus Aaron kind of situation for the Supreme Court, but not for, say, the Second Circuit. Like where you would respect the opinions and the judgments of the Supreme Court, and you're saying you would respect the judgment, but not necessarily the opinion of a lower court.
And again, I think in the vast majority of instances, our practice has been to respect the opinion as well, in the circuits as well, but my understanding is that has not been a categorical practice in the way respect for the precedents and the judgments of the Supreme Court has been.
So you're not hedging at all with respect to the precedent of this court?
That is correct. I believe the quotation from our application directly.
Okay.
So it's a pretty brutal line of questions too. So like, wait a minute. So you're saying that you're not going to, you reserve the right to defy lower court opinions that you don't like? Well, I mean, like generally we defer to the courts. What do you mean generally? Not in all instances? It's none? All? Somewhere in between? Is it every odd number, like, or certain districts? Is it certain opinions you like? I mean, again, Sauer has no good answer to this. And again, I gotta say, these are issues that I have long struggled with. Like when I was getting my political science degree in college, 10 years ago, I get it. These are tough questions because, again, at what point is the Supreme Court truly supreme? Are they the boss of the president and Congress? If the president can the Supreme Court literally give any order whatsoever, and Congress and the president are obligated to obey? Is there some discretion on that? These are deep constitutional questions that I 100% don't have the answer to. But it's funny, like, it's funny to see that even a Trump appointee is grilling Trump's Solicitor General in this way, and you can tell, like, he has no good answer for it. But if that wasn't bad enough, there was also Justice Kavanaugh. Okay, so we're going to play this clip as well, courtesy of CNN.
Well,
Let's refresh it.
Well, and it was interesting to hear from John Sauer, who's arguing on behalf of the government. He's the Solicitor General, basically number 3 at the DOJ. And he said to Justice Brett Kavanaugh that it's not clear how the president would enforce this executive order. I want people to just listen to what the Solicitor General had to say.
The states can continue to, the federal officials will have to figure that out.
How?
So you could imagine a number of ways that the federal officials could.
Such as
they could require a showing of, documentation showing legal presence in the country for a temporary visitor, for example.
For all the newborns? Is that how that's going to work?
Again, we don't know.
I mean, Kavanaugh sounded pretty skeptical there.
Yeah, that's the sound of a justice unconvinced. That's a bad moment for John Sauer. And let me tell you why that's especially important. If you're trying to sort of game out how might this decision come down. First of all, I think Trump's going to lose ultimately on birthright citizenship. I think his position departs too far from the way we've looked at that for 157 years. Every judge who's considered this lower court judge, regardless of ideology, has rejected that position. But the real ball game here is those nationwide injunctions. It's clear the 3 liberal justices are going to be against Trump on them. It's clear Alito and Thomas are going to be for him. So the ball game is, can you, if you're on the liberal side, get 2 out of Gorsuch, Roberts, Barrett, and Kavanaugh? And I think Kavanaugh sees a real problem with the practicalities here. And I think Amy Coney Barrett also voiced some real questions that I think would be of concern to the Trump administration.
Yeah, so there you go. I mean, this is not great. This was not a great showing by the Trump administration in court, which is why Donald Trump is lashing out publicly the way that he has. He doesn't want to piss the court off, so rather than chew the court out, including his own justices for asking incisive Socratic questions, he's instead trying to have his cake and eat it too, rant about the situation, draw attention to it, and also blame the Democrats so as to avoid pissing off the Supreme Court and potentially triggering them to vote against him. It's really funny stuff. I don't know how this court decision will come down. I would like to say I'm pretty confident that they'll rule against Trump on the issue of the 14th, well, rather of the birthright citizenship in particular. But who knows? You don't know this court. This court also gave Trump presidential immunity, which a lot of people thought would never happen. So we don't really know how far they'll go. But it says something that pretty much everybody agrees. Trump was humiliated in court, and he's obviously very upset about it. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.